Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Learning from the Legends session. I'm Brittany McGrath-Conk, Membership Manager with the National Auctioneers Association. Thank you for joining us. Learning from the Legends is a new free educational series produced by the NAA in order to share the professional experience and knowledge of some of the association's foremost experts and industry veterans. We're excited today to be joined by Barry Gordon, CAI, AARE, CES. Barry is CEO of Gordon's Estate Services and a founder of MaxSoul.com. He has been a transition specialist for 20 years, an auctioneer since 1977, and realtor since 1978. Barry is a sought-after speaker and educator. In 1991, he co-wrote and taught Certified Estate Specialist, the first course in the area of estate transition, and is now the exclusive trainer for Certified Relocation and Transition Specialist in Canada. He previously served on the NAA Board of Directors and as chairman of the AMI. Barry was inducted into the NAA Hall of Fame in 2010. We're so pleased to be joined by you today, Barry. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thinking back to the beginning of your career, what do you wish you had known then that you know now?
What I wish I knew now that I knew then. Really, I think it was, what the purpose of education was and what the purpose of higher education was. When I was a kid, I grew up like maybe a lot of folks in rural farm country. My dad had a livestock market, so I grew up in the cattle market business. And after grade 3, I asked myself every single year in every single class in school, what was I learning today that was going to be of use to me in my future ever? And I could never answer that question through the following grades. My grade 3 teacher was pretty good, and that's the last teacher in my life that I remember being a really good teacher in formal education. And so I finished, of course, elementary school and high school, and was happy to get out of high school at the end, did not go on to college or university, because college and university, in my view at that time, were for all my friends who didn't know what they wanted to do with their life. And for me at that time, I'd already been working really full-time while going to high school in the livestock market and buying and selling cattle and things like that. And so I didn't do that, but very quickly after, within a couple of years, I realized that there was a whole lot more to know, and that might have been a good idea for me to stay in school. So for me, I got my education other ways. I went into municipal politics when I was 20, and had one of those part-time political careers for about 15 years that had a lot of education in it as well. But I think that it would have been helpful for me to appreciate the value of formal education when I was young.
After 40 years in the auction industry and in the real estate business, what are some of the biggest changes you've had to make since the beginning of your career?
Well, the biggest change, the biggest adaptation really that we made was the full switch to online auction. And that really is it. Really, it's the whole shift to online auction and realizing that you can accomplish a whole lot more for a whole lot of more people. And that doesn't mean that I think that auction only, like online only, is the only way to do anything. I think there's lots of place for live auction in the world, and obviously there's lots of place for live/online where there's combinations. But for us, the big adaptation was the shift to online only, and how important a piece of business that is going to be going forward.
You talked about how you transitioned into that business. What was the biggest driving factor in your decision to go towards doing online-only auctions?
Well, there's a book by a guy named, I think, Simon Winnick, and the title is something like It Starts With Why. And so it's all about really knowing why you do the things you do and why you're in business and what purpose what is your purpose? What is it you're up to? And for us, it's about providing better choices for people who are downsizing or settling estates, better choices than they get in a lot of different places. And auction is one of those better choices. And the evolution of online auction for us is really, it gives us the ability to make a great choice available to a whole lot of people that wouldn't be able to have auction as one of their choices, because the cost of delivering traditional auction services, live auction services, economically don't fit with the needs of a lot of North Americans these days. In my view, 95% of the marketplace in North America for people downsizing and selling estates is a market that is not a good fit with live auction anymore, because the value of the average household versus the cost of dealing with that in a live format are not a fit anymore. And so without being able to supply online auction, which is a great choice, those folks are relegated to things like the tag sale, the estate sale, the bulk buyer, the junk dealer, the wholesaler, the shark who's trying to steal their stuff from them. And those are all bad choices. In my view, they're weak choices at best. And online auction is a great choice for people. It's transparent, competitive, finite. It just has so many great benefits. And so to us, it's about being able to supply choices to more people, and online gives us that ability, and that's the driving force.
That's really great to hear how you've made that part of your, another tool in your toolbox. It sounds like, or obviously you've made a career niche on working with transitions and estate sales. How did you decide that that was the market that you really wanted to focus your business on?
Well, it's interesting. You look around you and see, what it is that you can do. And one of the interesting things of being involved in the NAA is when you get to visit different auctioneers in other places, you see the different things that people are into, and this guy's selling mining equipment, and that guy's selling road building equipment, and this person's selling, large tracts of farmland, and this person's selling big equipment and big tractors. In our world, most of those things weren't close by geographically. They weren't on our list. We come from an area where the farms are small and the rock outcroppings are big, and it's got lots of nice mixed scenery. We call it Canadian Shield up here. But we just didn't have those big opportunities. But what we did have was a whole lot of people that just had basic needs. And so really, our company, I feel like, has been preparing for the last 35 years for the evolution that is upon us now and moving forward for the next 25 years, which really is this baby boom movement through society and the transition of assets from one generation to the next. And so that's what's going on. That's where we are. That's what was around us, and so that's what we decided we needed to serve.
Excellent. Prospecting new business can be challenging, especially as you're starting out in the beginning of your career. What advice do you have for new auctioneers when it comes to finding new clients? Yeah,
well, there's a whole lot of stuff you can do on social media these days from an actual prospecting standpoint. So I'd say be a student of social media and get that figured out. And the other thing is just simply, back to the Zig Ziglar school of thought, which is, be better than you need to be at everything you do, and leave an impression on the people around you. Too many folks these days, feel like they get a job and it's a 40-hour-a-week job or whatever it is, and they show up sort of on time, and at the end of the clock strikes 4 or 5, whenever the workday is supposed to be over, they're rushing out the door. But the kind of employee who's always going to find work, always going to have work, is the kind of person who shows up early, stays late, looks for ways to make improvements for whatever organization or client they're working for, and doesn't take just sort of status quo and the easiest route. They're looking to make the contribution that they can make and make the most important contribution they can make.
When you're working with those new clients, is there a rule or something that people should follow as to how they handle customer service?
Well, I think I read a quote that trust is the byproduct of integrity. So I think that's a Zig Ziglar as well. You just need to be great with clients. And one of the hard things when you're starting out is if you're taking on clients that are marginally profitable or are already a loss leader, it's hard to be able to fix problems. And the reality of a whole lot of this stuff in the estate business and the downsizing business is a lot of things that people have are modest in terms of value, and you can't handle those things a lot and make them work. I think that one of the biggest complaints about auctioneers from the public on the sell side of a transaction is, I didn't get paid for my stuff, or I didn't get enough for my chair, or I didn't get, that kind of thing. And those are all problems that fall out of somebody wanting to get the work, wanting to do the work, wanting to have the opportunity to have the auction, and not really settling down the seller and making sure that they have a solid expectation of what the result can be. And for a lot of sellers, the right expectation is here. The best expectation is we're going to make all your stuff go away. The next best expectation is that we're going to try to generate some return for you from it. But it may not be the best. When we were still doing live auctions, which is several years ago now, if you read somebody's consignor sheet, if you had a consignment sale, a whole lot of things, because you're selling 2 items a minute or something, aren't described really fully when you sell them. They're box lot, miscellaneous lot, this is miscellaneous, that's miscellaneous with something in it. And it's hard for a seller to read those sheets and sometimes feel that they can identify everything that they sent to the auctioneer. And unless they trust the auctioneer, it's easy to develop some nerves and nervousness and not, and be concerned that you didn't get paid for everything or something. So in early auctioneer, get some work. One of the most important things is making sure that the clients that they're working with have a solid understanding of what the right expectations are. So expectations are set properly.
Some of the best lessons are learned when everything goes wrong. What has been maybe your biggest challenge in the business, and how were you able to overcome that?
Well, one of our biggest, I think one of the biggest challenges is growing fast enough, responding fast enough, getting more accomplished in the time you have. I'm 57, and you start to just think a little bit that you need to get things done faster. When you're 20, you can think that the road's long and you got lots of time to get things done, and so you sometimes might think that, well, I can toast, or I can lollygag a little bit, but I encourage everybody to dig in, work hard, get the hard work done, get the pace going as fast as you can. It'll be a better ride later if you get a lot done.
Obviously, you've been involved in the NAA over the years. You were a big part of AMI. You've probably led some education sessions, definitely, for us over the years, and you served on the board. What are some of the ways the NAA has helped you in the span of your long career?
So for me, I joined the NAA so I could go to CAI. Being a non-American, when I went to auction school in North Carolina at 17, Mr. Forrest Mendenhall at the time and different instructors there encouraged me to join the National Auctioneers Association when I went home. I did not, and I didn't because I thought, well, you know what, that's the NAA, that's America, and I'm a Canadian. It's not really relevant for me. And I joined, I think, my Ontario Association whenever it formed. As a matter of fact, it wasn't until a little bit later I had the opportunity to become a charter director there. And then some other things after that. But regardless, I think maybe I was maybe 22 or 23, something along that line, and I became aware of CAI, and that in order to get the CAI, you needed to be a member of the NAA. So that's when I joined NAA. And when I joined, I found out some of the other benefits, the conventions, etc. Met lots of people with diverse opinions, and having access to all of the people, all the things I learned at any university, both from the people and in the classes, and then through NAA conventions, through the people and through the seminars. That's really what the big benefit was. It shows you how big the world is and who's, how many people were doing how many diverse and exciting and interesting things. and what kind of progress was being made on a whole lot of different fronts. And for sure, our business would not be remotely the same if we didn't find the NAA. As a matter of fact, with the changes that have taken place in the auction industry over the last 30 years, I would dare say we would not be, I don't know what I'd be doing, but I don't think I'd be have been in the auction business my whole life if it wasn't for the NAA. The NAA showed me and connected me with how to be in the business and how to evolve and how to find my own way and how to find our niche and how to exploit and grow in different things. But really being involved and being able to see people and what the different folks have done was all part of that.
Well, we definitely feel fortunate that you've been so involved over the years, and we appreciate all that you've done for the association.
Thank you.
Thank you. As for a new member, you talked about CAI was your draw. Is there any other programs or things that when they're first joining the NAA you would encourage somebody to take part in?
Well, I think you've got a lot of nice early programs now that didn't always exist, but certainly conference and show if you can get to it. I think that the various seminars that you can take in different forms are great. The situations that you run in Las Vegas and different things where there's 4 or 5 different courses going on, there's lots of different courses, and those courses are great. They're great exposure to the information, and they're also great exposure to peers and other people that are trying to grow something in the industry. One of the beautiful things about the auction industry is that you get in a room full of people that have some time to visit with you. You're always able to find somebody that's doing something that's relevant to some problem that you have, and they're typically in an area that's not geographically competitive for you, so you can find out really the inside lane on what people are doing and how they're doing it, and that's a great value.
And finally, Barry, what is the biggest lesson you've learned as an auction professional?
I would say it's something that we learned at CAI. It was something that I learned through Steve Martin, the Gwent Group, and it was based on a book by a guy named Bill Barker, and it was all about paradigms. And for me, the quote that hangs in my mind all the time is to keep your eye on the thing you can't see. And really what that means is to recognize that we're all blinded by the things, by our understanding of what's possible and how things get done. And every time we observe something that we didn't understand, our ability to understand things can grow a little bit. And so it's hard, it's understanding the importance of paradigms, because it is absolutely true. When a paradigm shifts, everybody goes to zero, and you don't want to be caught being the guy that does something that is completely irrelevant anymore. I've had this conversation the last little while, and I'll give you an example of Uber. And so what we've got in North America is we've got taxi commissions, and we got taxi drivers, and we got taxi licenses, and we got taxi quotas, and we got a great big expensive infrastructure that was all built to create safety, because we used to think that it wasn't entirely safe to get into a stranger's car and reach into your pocket and pay him cash for your ride and get back out. So we wanted a whole bunch of infrastructure to ensure that we didn't have to worry about whether or not that was all safe and easy, and we could remember the cab company's number. So now an app for your phone comes along, whereby you push the button on your app and the icon flashes, and you see a picture and the name of the guy who's going to pick you up in 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes. He's here. His car is going to be clean each and every time. The car is going to be a right fit for you. You're going to get in the car. You're going to have a nice ride wherever you go. You're going to get out of the car. You're going to get an invoice mailed to you. Your credit card gets billed automatically. It can be billed back to your office. You don't need to remember a phone number. You don't need to remember what city you're in. You don't need to remember much at all. It just happens. And what happens by all that is it makes the rest of all of that bureaucracy irrelevant. So a whole lot of bureaucracies are still fighting to be relevant. But how are they fighting? They're fighting by trying to be legislative. They're trying to hit you with a hammer. They're trying to fine them. They're trying to do all these things to block them. But it's not in the public interest. It's not about safety anymore. It's about preservation of paradigm. It's about preservation of their way of life at all costs. And that's, you know, the kind of thing that we can see. We're in the online auction space, and one of the bugaboos I have these days is legislation. This is a whole lot of legislation around state licensing that was frankly built originally to protect the public, because it was possible for an auctioneer to come into it from out of state somewhere and sell somebody's goods, take the money, and leave the state, and now they're hard to find. So we created a whole bunch of regulations in some areas that got to be an in-state bank, money can't leave here, it's got to be in a trust account, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. And I would suggest that a whole lot of that is made irrelevant by the internet when it comes to online auction. I think in live auction, sure, it can still make a lot of sense, but for online, you know, we've got international banking from Canada. You know, on our standpoint, we've had national banks my whole life, and so we don't have state-by-state banking. So when somebody's credit card gets processed automatically by a computer, the money goes to a safe place. It's easy to track. It's transparent. If the auction company doesn't do a good job, they get blamed online. So it's self-policing. It doesn't need any kind of bureaucracy to stay safer. When we look at eBay, we say, well, you know, a lot of folks look at eBay and say, you know, we'd like to see that legislated and licensed so that, you know, we could regulate it, collect tax, all that kind of stuff. Well, sure, lots of jurisdictions would like to do that, but do we really think that legislating eBay would make them safer for the public, for the cost of creating that safety? I think the answer is no. Online feedback is what makes it safe, and business practices are what makes it safe. And you know, we've got to look at the same thing, I think, in our industry and realize that you don't need all that stuff to create safety. It's a different world. You know, times are changed, and it's different. So, you know, what's the biggest lesson? It's paradigms. Keep your eye on the thing you can't see, and make sure that you're responding as quickly as you can in some fashion that keeps you doing something relevant that you want to do and be able to do.
Do you have any closing words for us, Barry?
No, I don't have too much to say. I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity to visit with whoever wants to listen to this podcast. And it's been a nice and interesting business filled with interesting people. And if you go to conferences and learn from the things that are available in NAA, there's a whole world out there for you, and you can build a nice, interesting life.
Thank you, Barry.
You're welcome.
Before we end today's session, a couple of closing notes. We will be back next month with a new installment in the Learning from the Legends series. You can access past sessions at auctioneers.org/legends. Thank you again for taking part in today's broadcast. We'll see you in March.